The Shadows of Willowbrook. Chapter 1. The Strange Neighbor. I hadn't stepped foot in Willowbrook for nearly a decade, but as I stood before my childhood home, it still felt familiar beneath my feet. Like the worn welcome mat was waiting with open arms to greet me after all these years of absence. A mix of nostalgia and trepidation stirred within as I took in the Victorian house's ivy-covered facade, its once vibrant paint now faded to a dull moss. The silence of the street greeted me warmly, save for the occasional car driving by on Maple Avenue. As I turned my key, the old lock gave way with a satisfying click, unlocking memories long buried. Inside, shadows danced across walls that seemed darker than I remembered. Each step echoed through the empty rooms as I settled into the rhythm of homecoming. My suitcase had barely hit the hardwood floor when I heard the knock at the door. Before it could fall from my shoulder, an unfamiliar voice resonated in the hallway. "Hello." No response came, only the creaks and groans of settling timber. Curiosity piqued. I opened it to find a frail man with piercing eyes peering through spectacles. Mr. Holloway, my neighbor from across the street, nodded as if an unspoken conversation had passed between us. "Welcome back, Miss Sarah." As days blended together in this new routine, Mr. Holloway became an indomitable presence, always lurking nearby when I ventured outside or sat on our shared porch, his gaze lingering too long before disappearing into his house. Shadows would dance across the windows of my childhood bedroom at night, but never quite in sync with the winds rustling through leaves. It unsettled me, yet I brushed it off as an old home settling back to life. One afternoon, he sidled up beside me on that familiar porch. "Be wary of the shadows," he muttered before retreating back into his house, slamming his door loudly enough to rattle the windows. Shadows? My mind conjured tales from long-forgotten dreams and too many late nights huddled over books. I laughed it off, but the feeling persisted, an unease that settled beneath my ribcage, whispering there was more to Mr. Holloway than a friendly neighbor. At night, sleep fled as eerie whispers laced with unrecognizable words haunted me. Waking drenched in sweat, the imprint of a cold hand on my shoulder and sunken eyes stared back from the mirror. Mine or someone else's? I'd brush it off as exhaustion. In the day, Mr. Holloway would appear at odd hours, whispering cryptic warnings. "They watch. The silence is not what it seems." The man was losing his mind. Willowbrook hadn't changed so drastically it needed to be haunted by a neighborly ghost. Or had I? The line blurred between his words and nightmares. One day, while unpacking in the attic room, an old trunk caught my eye. Rusted hinges protesting as they opened with a groan. Paintings, abstract scenes of nightmarish landscapes, greeted me. A chill ran down my spine at their grotesque beauty, each more unsettling than the last. That evening, I found them replaced by portraits, and I wasn't alone in the attic anymore. Shadows danced within those paintings now. Mr. Holloway knocked on my door. "Strange occurrences, Miss Sarah? Strangers watching from corners of your eye?" His eyes gleamed behind thick glasses when he asked. Torn between his concerns and paranoia, I shook my head. In the night, another painting materialized, a woman in white, face obscured by darkness. Chapter 2. The Vanishing Paintings. The attic paintings haunted me, as did Mr. Holloway's warnings. My mind churned with theories. Perhaps a neighborly prank gone wrong, or some dark family history trapped within these walls. But the woman in white, her presence seared into my dreams. I'd awaken to find new canvases littering the floor, each depicting twisted scenes. Forest creatures watching from hollows of darkness, eyes ablaze like embers. An onyx figure lurking behind me when I checked my back. The attic now resembled a gallery of unease. I sought solace in books and coffee shops, but couldn't shake off the sensation of being watched everywhere. Every whisper felt like a knowing gaze upon my skin. Mr. Holloway's presence became constant, appearing at my elbow as if waiting for something to occur. My grip on reality weakened with each day. Shadows moving behind me, whispers seeping through walls, echoes that didn't belong. During the night's first real sleep in weeks, a painting melted into a landscape of moonlight and black. The woman stood tall amidst whispering trees. She turned as I watched, face revealed by the silver light. Her eyes bore hollows of untold sorrow, yet they followed me to school. In class, people stared, their faces blurring like in a dream. When my gaze met hers across campus, her eyes held my stare before she vanished among the crowd. My sanity teetered at the precipice as Willowbrook's residents began whispering about Willow Creek murders from decades past. Victims always found with black eyes. The woman haunted my thoughts until I found myself wandering to that old oak on a moonless night. Her figure stood amidst branches, ethereal and sorrowful. "Run," she mouthed before vanishing into the woods. A twig snapped behind me. Heart pounding, I turned to meet Holloway's gaunt frame as he materialized from darkness. His eyes held an unspoken urgency. "They're coming back." With that, he vanished. Back in my childhood home, shadows had coalesced into black silhouettes watching from the walls, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Chapter 3. The Final Revelation. The paintings, once cryptic warnings, now revealed scenes of unspeakable horror. I pieced together the truth in a blinding flash of insight. Willowbrook's residents, or their dark reflections, had been consumed by something ancient and malevolent long before my return. Mr. Holloway was right. This wasn't paranoia. In the attic, where it all began, I found artifacts that corroborated my revelations. Newspaper clippings on ritual sacrifices and an antique photograph of a woman with black eyes. Willow Creek's murders were but symptoms of something far more sinister. A hidden room now housed my research, the painting's transformation a window into the horrors they sought to conceal. Holloway waited, his eyes sunken with age, yet brimming with knowledge he dared not voice aloud. The town had made pacts with entities, shadows of our deepest fears, come to life in this quiet corner. I was about to confront him when screams pierced the night air. Willowbrook's residents, all of them, their faces twisted with a hunger beyond humanity. Holloway led me into the hidden room and closed the door behind us. "The shadowed ones," he began, his voice a low whisper, "invaded centuries ago. Paintings came to life, ethereal figures that were not human. They'd returned, seeking her kind, the woman in white." My heart raced as I comprehended the paintings weren't just visions. They were doorways. In that attic room, Holloway revealed his family's pact, blood rituals to keep them at bay. His family had been chosen guardians, but at a terrible cost, their souls bound to protect this town from those who resided in between worlds. I found her on Willow Creek that night, the woman, surrounded by abominations in the shadows. Holloway guided me through the ritual, chanting and offerings to contain what dwelled within. Together we fought back, an act of defiance. As dawn broke, They fled, eyes aglow like embers. But for how long? Holloway vanished. I was left alone with his knowledge. The paintings now silent witnesses as a last guardian. They'd return when the pact unraveled. My resolve hardened. Holloway's sacrifices had prolonged this nightmare, but it needed to end. When I faced him again, no longer could I look away from the horror we'd unleashed upon Willow Creek. I stood before an abyss of shadowed figures and spoke aloud in defiance. A woman with black eyes, painting her portrait on the canvas. Our pact dissolved as they vanished. Holloway's face appeared at my elbow once more. He said his secret kept him here. Now it was mine to bear. The town began whispering, "It is she," but I stood vigilant as guardian of this crossroad, protector and prisoner. The hidden room, artifacts, paintings, a museum to the madness in us all. Hollowed eyes watched from every corner, yet Holloway's legacy passed on. My life a testament to those who fought back against horrors we dare not speak of. As Holloway vanished into their realm, I knew two truths. That night would come again, and it would be painted in blood and shadow if no one took the mantle. In darkness, I stood before the black eyes I bore, guardian and prisoner. The paintings witnessed, so did she, in every corner, watching as Willow Creek's true guardian awoke to an eternal vigilance, born of madness and defiance.